You are watching or listening to Purham and Associates. For more information, go to rpurham.com or follow me on all social media platforms and subscribe at RPURHAM. Thanks. See you over there. Hey, good day to you all. Welcome to Permanent Associates. I'm your host, Randy Purham. Hey, I hope y'all all have a fantastic weekend and stayed out of trouble. I just found out this morning that there was a mass shooting on the east side of Austin yesterday early morning. News is not really even covering it, so I hope everybody's okay in that regard, and the crazies stay out of the way, and then the shooting at the White House Correspondents' Dinner on Friday night. People are just like losing their minds. But we're gonna get into it. We're gonna get into all that later. We got a very special guest that's returning back to us. A lot of y'all know who he is, and I heard a lot of you actually reached out to me and said you got the books and all that good stuff. So I'm happy to hear that, and I'm sure Richard C. Lyons is happy to hear that as well. He is the author of The DNA of Democracy, Volume 1, and Shadows of the Acropolis, Volume 2. He was born and raised in Midwestern United States. His education took him through Loyola Academy, the University of North Texas, and a graduate career at Southern Methodist University. Lyons has been a lifelong admirer of the written word, and which has led him to the literary pursuits as a poet, essayist, and screenwriter. And professionally, Lyons is a third-generation printer whose father dedicated his life to education in the publishing and telecommunications fields. Lyons has been involved in printing, publishing, stage, and television production throughout his professional career. Ladies and gentlemen, introducing the some and the others, Mr. Richard Lyons. Welcome back, sir. Welcome back. How's everything going?
Randy. Very good. Thank you.
Absolutely, absolutely. Give us an update on what you've been up to the last, I guess it was like January, December time frame since you've been on. So give us an update on what's going on with you.
That's a lot to talk about personally. But professionally, I've been writing a number of articles as I have been doing. There's a third volume now to the series called Passages Through the Shadows. And it's a collection, Randy, of all the articles I've written for various publications, and all to the same point. It's a battlefield chronicle between our founding principles and the socialism being pushed by the left. And so, whereas we're much better off since the advent of Trump's election, the left has not calmed down. They're in fact more volatile and more virulent and violent than they were previously.
Very true, very true. And congratulations on the volume 3, ladies and gentlemen. Here it is up on the screen. For those that are watching and saying, "What is that?" It's Passages Through Shadows, the volume 3. I was going to touch on it actually later on, but since we're here now on it, so volume 1, volume 2, volume 3. This one here, you said it's a more of a collection of your articles and everything else. What kind of like gave you the idea to put it into a volume 3 versus a standalone?
Okay, so this is called the DNA of Democracy series now, Randy. Volume 1 is all about those elements of human history that came together into the how and why our country was created the way it was, and how we had shifts in the Constitution up to the point of the women's suffragette movement that expanded the franchise, that expanded representation, that was the ultimate in the checks and balances between states and federal government, localities and states, and rights, individual rights, family rights, rights of faith, and so forth, and a federal government. Volume 2, which you see behind me here, The Shadows of the Acropolis, is a history of our country since the presidency of Woodrow Wilson. Why is that important? As Clarence Thomas just pointed out in an article, I hope it is a well-read article. I urge everybody to pick it up. Since Woodrow Wilson's presidency, socialism created a wedge into our founding principles. And for 100 years, the Democrat Party has been growing socialism in our country incrementally. In other words, it's without your seeing it very much or noticing it very much. But for 100 years, they have been taking more and more of our wealth from individuals, businesses, everything else, and using it to create more power for themselves. And where their power resides most now is in the administrative state. Why is that important? It's because the administrative state, which is for the most part under the executive branch, has been taking more and more power from the representative branch of government. And in the administrative state, we see these massive budgets passed by Congress, but then it goes, all that money, trillions of dollars, goes through the administrative state, and persons appointed for life in the administrative states determine who gets that money, right? It could be Stacey Abrams. It could be an NGO, like in Minneapolis, right? All the money goes out to Medicare, Medicaid, it goes to an organization that states manage in, say, Minnesota. And we're blind to all this spending, and it's actually money being stolen. So now they're using all this money to grow socialism in our country, and now socialism has become very apparent, and people have to wake up to it. That's why I wrote these 2 books. Now, the 3rd book is The Day to Day. It's articles based on current events which show socialism's forces against our founding principles and why it's important to distinguish them and know what we're fighting for and what we're fighting against. Because I don't think people really do. They think, oh, we're in the United States of America, nothing bad can happen, nothing bad ever did. It's happening right now.
You're absolutely right about that, Rich. And, you know, unfortunately, we do have a society that is not paying attention. And I hate to say the word, they're not woke enough to it, but they're not awakened to what's going on. They're not awakened to it. So I want people to wake up and see what's going on around them. You know, get out their silos, get out their, you know, their comfort zones, their safe spaces, you know, and pay attention to what, you know, what's happening, you know, not only in our country, but just in society in general. And to your point about Clarence Thomas, he was just here in Austin, Texas, here last week, speaking at University Texas campus here down the street from me. And he gave a speech on this.
He probably took his talking points from the article.
Yeah, he did. He did.
Let me tell you what this is. This book, right? It's the one I have back here, Volume 2. At the end of it, on page 380 and 381, you can take a look, Randy. You have all the characteristics or elements that go into a free society, the foundations of our country. On the other side of the page, you have all the characteristics of socialism, or what the Democrat Party and the left are trying to create in our country. They are not just dissimilar. They are opposites. They are 2 different, opposite governing theories. The one is freedom, individual freedom, protected human rights. The other is the rights of the state and the rights to run a tyranny and take everybody's rights, no matter what those rights are.
You said something there just now, and I wasn't going to touch on it today, but we'll touch on it now. The Islamification of the United States. You know, the ideology of Islam is, you know,
Yes.
by far and large, you know, antithetical, you know, framework of not only Western democracy, but our Constitution in itself. And you have a lot of
Very
people.
well put. Yes.
You have a lot of people. Thank you. You have a lot of people that are like embracing and saying, "Oh, it's freedom of religion," you know, and we have a separation of church and state, so it doesn't matter if they're, you know, coming over here and, you know, setting up mosque and everything else, but they're missing the fundamental piece of what Islam stands for on a radical side, you know, under Sharia, under the umbrella of Sharia, and that is
Yeah.
the eventual eradication of Western society. You know, if you don't believe the way that they believe you shouldn't exist. You know, and people kind of like just miss that, or they dismiss
That's
that point.
that's the problem.
Yeah,
But think
yeah,
how akin that is. Think how akin that is to socialism.
exactly,
If you don't believe in
exactly. And they're embracing
socialism,
that.
you have no right to talk to
Yes.
us. And all right, so let's just take, very well put, Randy. Let's just take Sharia law.
Mhm.
Sharia law is in contravention. The whole system of America runs because we have a single constitution that allows everybody's rights, right? Through the Bill of Rights, etc. What Sharia law says is that it's in total disregard of our common law. Sharia law is its own law and demands that you follow it, or you don't have a right to exist.
Hmm.
And when you talk about freedom of faith, okay, we have to allow Islam to exist, but Islam doesn't allow any other religion to exist.
Yeah.
There are two realms of Islam that they pronounce. One is how do they put it? Darab al-Islam. That means the realm of Islam. Within the realm of Islam, everything is at peace. Then there is the Darab al-Arab, which is the area of war. That's everything outside Islam that Islam is at war with, which includes Judaism, Hinduism, Taoism, Christianity, all of it.
Yeah.
They are at war with every other faith, thinking that their faith is the only faith that should exist on earth. You compare that to the Chinese system of socialism. The Chinese believe that they are the overlords of the earth and that everyone else on the earth is a vassal to themselves.
Hmm.
Yes? And inferior
Yeah.
and other and not equal.
Right.
Our system, whether you're socialist or Islam, our system is based on everybody having equal rights under common law.
Hmm.
Under Islam, it's Sharia. That's not in common with any of our laws. We don't
Exactly.
talk about having to wear a hijab. We don't talk about having to bow down 5 times a day. We don't, right? We don't talk about having to literally cut the throat of our neighbor
Yeah.
if they're not Islamic.
Hmm. Exactly.
That's the difference.
Yep.
Christianity is welcoming to all. Democracy is welcoming to all. Islam and fascism are only welcome to their own.
Hmm.
And eventually, though these two are fighting they're fighting in common cause together now. Islamism and socialism. Most notably in the person of Mamdani
Yes.
and Hassan Piker.
Hmm.
They are eventually if they succeed, eventually they'd get to the point where they'd cut each other's throats. Because the socialists don't believe in Sharia law.
Yeah.
They believe in autocratic tyranny.
Exactly.
So
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And ladies and gentlemen, I highly encourage you, if you have not done so, regardless of what you believe religiously or, you know, your faith base, but get the Quran itself and read it for yourself, and you'll see the tenets in there that we're talking about right now, and you'll be mind blown, because a lot of people don't read the Quran. And also encourage you to read it backwards, so you start at the end and go forward. That's actually the logical way to read the Quran. So
it's a great idea.
and that way you'll get a total sense of, you know, what's at stake and what's going on. And like I said, a lot of people are like, to your point, Rich, you know, they say, oh, socialism, oh, it's not that bad, you know, what's wrong with taxing the rich, you know, and taking care, you know, investing that money into social programs, you know, for daycare. They shroud it around all the good things that sound great. Free
Well,
daycare.
they used our,
Yeah.
you're exactly right. They use our benevolent Christian Judaic
Mm-hmm.
tendency
Yeah.
against us. It's
Mhm.
like jujitsu.
Yeah.
They're taking our strength and using it to make us weak.
Mm-hmm.
And they are not. They are not taking the money to help the poor. They're taking it to lock in constituencies,
Yep.
to lock in the vote.
Exactly.
And now it's gone from, being primarily a constituency of labor unions and the working class to then the poor and now to the thieves
Mm-hmm.
and the
Yeah.
NGOs that are taking money out of these benevolent causes
Mm-hmm.
and taking the money and enriching themselves.
Exactly, and they're creating a new welfare class in a sense. You know, the NGOs. They're essentially
Yeah.
a new welfare class because the poor, they kind of like they became a little bit more elevated into the social hierarchy of being self-sufficient because they've been poor so long. They learned how to survive. You know, so it's kind of like, yeah, we're good. You know, we're not going to get involved in any of that mess. So we're just worrying about surviving day to day. So now the welfare class, the new welfare class, is the NGOs. They're like, gimme, 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 gimme. How can I get this money? How can I sign up for these programs and everything else
Right.
to get money? And then you got the politicians saying, "Oh, don't worry, I got you. You know, let me write that into the bill, Omar. You know." And next thing you know,
Yeah, let me write this big fat check.
and get a
And you're
kickback.
right. NGOs place themselves between the administrative state and all those massive beneficences,
Yep.
in between that and the persons they're supposed to serve, right? Which is the poor and the needy.
Yeah.
And they're taking the money in the middle.
Yes.
And so it's become a racket.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's now, and then the money goes to the NGOs, and then the NGOs pay the Democrat Party, right? They pay for all their campaigns. They also pay for the protesters in the streets
Yeah.
of Minneapolis,
Exactly.
right?
Crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Rich, I want.
And most people, maybe other than you, a lot of people don't know these things.
Right. Yeah.
They just don't. So, very thankful for your show.
Thank you. I walk around out here, and have these hard conversations with people, even people that's on the right. They are just totally oblivious to what's going on, and they're like, "No, that's conspiracy theory." That's the first thing today. It's a default position to say that it's a conspiracy theory when you're telling them that your life is at risk. It's just like it's like what?
You know what's funny is I have a near relation who loves the chit chat of the conspiracy sort of thing, and it is my belief that the left actually generates crazy conspiracies in order to have that outlet. When you want to talk seriously with somebody, no, it's just a conspiracy. Look, there's 100 of them out there.
Right.
And they're all crazy.
Yeah.
And I think they generate them in order to be able to say, no, it's just a conspiracy.
I agree with you. With you.
It's real simple. Socialism has been growing in this country for 100 years.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's at the point where it has taken over now in New York City in the person of Mamdani.
Yep.
And this is a big test case.
Yes, and the voters out there, they have buyer's remorse, and the millionaires and billionaires, they're leaving. They're going to Florida. They're coming here to Texas. They're saying, yeah, we're getting away from that. And then now we got this campaign, so to speak, of trying to turn Texas blue, and it's like, yeah, we don't see that happening because guess what? Everybody that was in these states, in these blue states that are trying to get away from that, they came here, so they're shoring up, our voter base, so it's like, yeah, good luck, but I don't know, I could be wrong, I could be surprised, and if that does happen.
People say, that's another great point. Some people say, Randy, that the persons from the blue states will move because they don't like the tax policies, but they're going to carry their politics with them.
Yes.
So that's the hope in Florida and Texas, that it'll shift states from red to purple or blue.
Yeah, I hope not, And if that is the case,
If it's the case, we're in a lot of trouble.
a lot of trouble. Yes, and I'm gonna have to
A
look
lot
to
of
Europe. I'm gonna have to look to Europe or one of these little islands and start a
No, they're
new.
even worse. They're worse. They've had socialism since
True.
since
Yeah,
World War II
yeah.
and before. That's
True.
their problem too. Socialism.
That is true.
Yeah.
I want to jump into the get your thoughts on the Iran U.S. war. And what's going on with that? So actually today is the these 2 month anniversary. I'm going to say anniversary, but the 2 months that the war since the war started, and
Yeah.
we're kind of like at I'm not going to say a stalemate, but it kind of like seemed like it just got quiet on the front. I was watching this morning where they're talking about Iran submitted another proposal taking the nuclear piece off the table, and it's like,
Of course they
are
did.
why are they in position to negotiate? Why haven't we just gone in and just say, you know what, we're not going to play with you guys anymore. We're just going to take over the Strait of Hormuz and open up the strait and get these ships out of here or get these ships in. And you guys, we should just continue to bomb you and be done with this. I personally am not really in favor of this war, but I get it and I understand the impetus of the need to eventually deal with Iran. So here we are. But I want to get your thoughts on what's going on right now with that.
Well, I'll tell you, this is another book of mine. It's called But By the Chance of War.
Damn,
And
Rich,
it deals
when
in
do you
four parts of human history and the different things in human nature that create war, and one is weakness. All right, so part 4 of this is a drama that takes place in modern day Middle East, and it is about a nuclear holocaust. And Donald Trump, 60 days ago, and even a year ago when he did the first bombing mission to take out the nuclear capability of Iran, that prevented what part 4 of this book prophesies, right? But by the chance of war. And that is a nuclear holocaust. Because if you have a rogue nation like Iran that has nuclear capability, first of all, they can wipe out Israel with one bomb. Now, they were within a week to 10 days and told Steve Witkoff this directly. We can produce 11 nuclear bombs and deliver them in 7 to 10 days, if we so choose, or we can negotiate. Well, when Witkoff heard that and translated that to Donald Trump, Trump said, no, they will not have nuclear weapons in 7 to 10 days. We're going to see about that right now. That was the attack a year ago. Now, 60 days ago, we went in with epic fury and absolutely devastated the country and knocked out the top 50 to 100 leaders of the country, which are hardline leaders. Now, I'm going to take you sideways a little bit. The whole Arab Spring that happened a number of years ago during Obama's presidency, all the Middle East looked like they were going to have the East European-style revolutions and create democracy throughout the Middle East. What happened was they had parades, and then the hardline military and the clerics again assumed power and just wiped out the whole impetus to democracy. It happened in Libya, Syria, everywhere else around the Middle East. Well, what's happening in Iran now is the hope that the moderates and that middle class in Iran, the rational people, can assume institutional control. Otherwise, the military's still there, and they're fighting for their lives. Literally, if they give up, they're going to lose their lives, if not from us, from their own people, 42,000 of whom they killed. So we're waiting for rational people to rise, and they're still saying, no, we're going to negotiate. So, for instance, this morning, you're exactly right. They have a new proposal. We will open up the Strait of Hormuz if you stop your blockade, and then we'll talk about nuclear weapons. Well, what they're doing is stringing it along until we have an election. And the political pressure is on us to leave entirely. That's how they play America. We'll get a favorable president with the next one. And believe me, Randy, John Kerry, during Trump's first administration, told the mullahs of Iran, just wait it out.
Mhm.
Just wait it out. The Democrats are going to come back to power. Then we're going to pay you more money. Then we're going to pave the way for you to have nuclear power. Don't worry. Just stand by. So that's what they're doing now.
Yeah.
I'm sure the Democrat Party in some way is communicating and saying, just string it along, string it along.
Mhm.
Get to November 5, get to the election.
Yeah. And you're right, Rich. That John Kerry did do that, and he is a treasonous, traitorous bastard. I never did care for John Kerry, and people.
Put again, Randy.
That guy. He needs to just leave the political world altogether. I don't care if you left the planet too, but anyway. But he. Not only John Kerry, but even today's Democrats, you're right. They're telecommunicating this support to Iran. They're pushing their propaganda in our media, and this is like, wow, really? Chris Murphy, senator, U.S. senator, you gonna say awesome that they got Iran got a couple of ships out of the strait, and now he's trying to downplay it like, oh, it was just sarcasm. Yeah, you should have said. Insert sarcasm. Then we wouldn't have nothing to talk about. But just to say the fact that it was awesome that they did that. They're telling us how they really feel. They're telling us what they really think. President Trump pointed it out at the State of the Union. When he said, "Stand up if you believe that." The first job of the first duty of the Congress is to protect the American people. All the Democrats stay seated. So it's. I wonder. I just wonder if the American people come this November, are they gonna re-elect these same buffoons back to office, or is it gonna be a total wipeout? Maybe a total wipeout of everybody, and we just start all over again. And now we have a new Congress that's trying to figure things out for the next 2 years because they're all brand new. That would be. I would be okay with that.
The retention of office for House of Representatives. People have been there for 100 years, I know. So but what has to happen, if you ask me, Randy, is that the moderates in the Democrat Party have to get tired of all this going against America's foundations, literally fighting against our constitutional republic on a daily basis, whether it's from domestic sources or foreign sources.
Yeah.
And to be acting like the communications department of the Iranian Ayatollahs in America is really, why? Baffling. If I'm an average Democrat, why can't I see this?
Yeah.
Why is this not alarming?
Yeah, Senator Fetterman.
John Fetterman ought to be standing up and he ought to be raising a flag. No, you're not the Democrat Party. We are. Yeah. The moderate working class Democrats. What it is now is elites and their socialist armies. Mm-hmm. That's what the Democrat Party is now.
I agree,
and it's not Judeo-Christian; it's socialist and Islamist.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, and I think the problem with the elites in Congress right now is that they have been so insulated from reality that any idea that comes along, no matter how extreme it is, it's a good idea to them because they're just thinking about my security in this position that I'm in. So I'm gonna cater to that. Yeah. And so it's just compounds of stupidity and craziness. And they're like, well, I'm already deep into this thing, and all these crazy groups then paid me to be a part of this agenda of theirs, so I have to capitulate to them. And so it's just this is where we're at now. Yeah, it's crazy. But
think about it, that's socialism. Yes. It really is. Mm-hmm. The socialist wing of the party has taken control of the ship, and it's going in a certain direction.
Yeah.
And if you don't go with the ship, you won't survive if you're a Democrat. Unless you say, I agree with everything you say, AOC, you're going a little faster than we want to. But nobody objects.
Right.
Nobody objects to Hassan Parker and what he's doing. Nobody objects to Mamdani going after every dime he can rip out of people. Nobody objects to sanctuary cities and states where crime is rampant and they just allow it. Mm-hmm. It's the Democrat Party is it's a fight over the American soul, Andy, whether we're staying with our founding principles or allowing socialism to kill them. That's where we're at right now. It's really a profound time.
It is, and I want to get your thoughts on going back to Iran real quick. Currently they're under kind of like this theocratic system of governance. Do you see with this turbulence, this turmoil and turbulence that they have going on right now, do you see them shifting to a form of democracy anytime soon, or after dust settles, it's going to be just business as usual?
Well, that is the great hope, but the problem is the military, the IRGC has a stranglehold on the institutional power of that country, backed up by the clerics. To what had been the hope in going in there was first knock their nuclear program out and buy the world 20 years, right, before what I prophesied in this happens. Buy 20 years of time by killing their program. The other hope was that you would knock out enough of their leadership that the leadership would start fighting with each other. And I think that's happening now. Yes. Allowing other and better and more moderate voices like those who are in the economy that that might speak rationally. Persons who want a better future than to be, Iran could be the wealthiest country in the whole Middle East. They've spent all their wealth for 50 years on the military to oppress, butcher, and rape their own people and to threaten their neighbors for 50 years. They could otherwise be the wealthiest, most prosperous, most dynamic country in that whole part of the earth.
Yeah. But
they decided to follow a medieval bunch of clerics who demand that they hate everybody unlike themselves. I mean, that's really where we're at. So the hope is that beyond having a parade, right, and beyond aspiring to democracy and free enterprise, being a friend to neighbors rather than an enemy, you have to have institutional help. And as long as the IRGC controls a thuggery that can kill 42,000 people within a week, I mean, that's what they did. They can do it again. So until they can't do that, we're in trouble. But we have to stop letting them pull us along anymore. There has to be a date set now that is a few days from now, where if you do not give up, you do not pronounce that you're giving up your nuclear program forever, we're gonna go back to bombing, or we're gonna take Carg Island. But the blockade's staying. We're not going away, and you're not going to lead us on. Yeah, that's what they want to do.
I agree. And I look at it like this. With NATO, well, I should say the European allies. Can't call them NATO. And they just the European allies, quote unquote, air quotes here, ladies and gentlemen. That's somewhat friends of ours. They're sitting on the sidelines, and there's and I hate to talk about it because these are friends of mine. I retired out of NATO, and so it's just the see like the 180 that they have taken over the years. Because when I was there 6 years ago, we planned for stuff like this, and we talked about, we sat around the long conference room tables, PowerPoint to death. For hours on end, talking about Russia and Ukraine. We knew that was about to happen. We actually planned for that one. Russia, Ukraine. We talked about the resurgence of in case something happened over in Kosovo. It was like so many different things around the world that was going on at that time that was happening like behind closed doors. Iran. We was talking about going back into Iraq again to deal with Syria. So it was all these things that we was already planning, like, okay, these are things that's about to happen. We don't know when, but it's happening. And Iran was kind of like in that tier of planning. And so to see them now say, oh, well, we'll wait till the United States finish the job and then we'll come in and help. It's like, like you don't have to do anything then. If we finish the job, there's no job to do, So it's like what are we doing here? And so I'm of the position now that I would be okay if the United States pulled out of NATO if they just say, hey, EU, you got 50 countries over there. Y'all figure it out.
Yeah.
And because we're
Do
over
it
here.
yourself.
Yeah, do it yourself. Come together and figure it out. We're going to pull out and we're going to take care of our own over here across the pond away from you idiots. I'm okay with that. But people that I talk to, they're like, oh, no, we got to have this alliance. I'm like, for what? What is the purpose of this alliance? Now, the alliance was useful 60 years ago, World War II era. It was useful.
It kept Western Europe free, didn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
It did, yes. Did. But now with the shift of the geopolitical climate and the players involved and everything else, NATO has lost its utility. It's just like, what is your point? What is the purpose of you guys? You can't even defend your own land. You're relying on other countries to band with you to defend your own stuff. Yes. It's like, what are we doing here? So I want to get your thoughts on that, sir.
Well, historically, what happened was we became too benevolent a guardian for Western Europe.
Yeah.
Instead of spending money on their defense, what did? They spent it for socialist outreach. First of all, they spent it on their own poor. Then they imported the poor from the Middle East and support them now. And support they're actually feeding Sharia enclaves in dare not go neighborhoods where they don't communicate with other Europeans, right? It's the balkanization of Western Europe. You have these huge Muslim populations that are actually, not akin to the laws of France or Germany or Spain or England. And so they've spent all their money on this, becoming more socialist.
Yeah.
Instead of defending themselves, and they've relied on us. So over all these years, the ultimate insult was that we're asking Britain, can we use the island of Sergio Garcia in the Indian Ocean? Because that's a main point, as you would know, Randy, where we station our assets in order to have flyover and sea channels to the Middle East, right? It's a huge harbor and aviation hub. And no, England says, no, we don't think you can. Well, we built it.
Yeah.
We built it.
It's technically ours.
They're borrowing us literally from our own house to defend them, because during this interchange of missile fire, a missile was launched from Iran that went 2,500 miles trying to bomb Sergio Garcia, 2,500 miles.
Yeah.
We didn't know they had that capability. You know what they could do with that bomb? They could bomb London and level it.
Yep.
Level it. And here's the UK government telling us, no, you can't use Sergio Garcia. Because, Iran's not going to touch us. Yes, they can.
They can, yeah.
Yes, they
can, and they will.
So for the bases to protect them, we're being barred from those bases, and the very country barring us is the one that could be hit by another missile.
And that's unfortunately, I hate to say this, but perhaps that's something that should happen. So they will say, like, "Oh, snap!
Yeah,
we just got hit. Hey, U.S., can you help?"
We need to defend ourselves. And let's talk about Britain for just 1 second. This is hysterical. So they have a base in Cyprus, and they have to go defend it because the British Cypriots are begging them, please, you have to send us help.
Yeah.
So they send one ship of the British Navy, the once vaunted, world-circling, world-dominant British Navy. It takes it 2.5 weeks to arrive to Cyprus. And when it gets there, it breaks down. Because they haven't spent the money on defense. Right?
We had that same problem.
They're too busy spending money on people who sit around all day.
Yeah, we had that same problem. We had that same problem in our exercise, or it was my last exercise with NATO. It was called Trident Juncture 18, and we had all these military assets from other countries, deployed to Norway. We was on the shores of Norway, and it was.
How cool is that?
It was very cool. It was an excellent exercise. We planned that thing for like almost 2 years, and we deployed the assets to Norway. Did a amphibious assault on the. So it was kind of like a rendition of the storming the beaches of Normandy type of thing. So we was demonstrating, and we had Russia there. We had Russian officers there. So we showed them like, you can mess around with us if you want to. This is what will happen to you, type of thing. And they were just like, oh, wow, okay, this is this is nice, But in the same token, we had vehicles breaking down. We had boats, throttling out. And some of the helicopters, they couldn't fly because of maintenance issues and stuff like that. But we still pulled off the mission. But it kind of showed that their contribution, their financial contribution was severely lacking because they didn't maintain the equipment that they were supposed to maintain.
Yes.
And so the United States, guess what we had to do? We had to fork up the money to help sustain the entire operation. Although this was a training event, we had to fork up the money to help sustain that. And
that's been going on for 50 years, more than that.
Exactly. So, yes.
75 years now.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I had this conversation with a lady the other day while we was doing a voter registration drive, and she was asking about like what were my thoughts on NATO, and I was like, we might want to go ahead and get out this money pit, because this car is not moving, and so she was just like she was taken aback. She thought that because I was, retired military, that I was going to be all in support of that. And I was like, no, I was there.
Yeah.
And I see firsthand what happened. I looked at the budget reports and everything else, and it was crazy. And because we travel, we went to go travel. No, we went to go travel.
You can replace.
Yeah.
You can replace the UN and NATO.
Oh yes,
with an organization of free states.
Yes.
Which recognize human rights first, common law, right? Free enterprise that are alike in their minds. We are now a hybrid country that's half socialist, dealing with a hybrid continent of Europe that's mostly socialist. And we're not defending the principles, that we're supposed to be based on.
Correct.
That's the key crux. So if you have an organization of states that actually believe in bills of rights, actually believe in constitutions, actually believe in freedom of the press, not being a mouthpiece of Iran in America, right? And not being the perpetual enemy of President Trump. I think that would be much more helpful and much better investment of taxpayer money.
I agree, and to your point, the UN, the United Nations, is also useless. I see the UN as a macro version of the United States Congress. They're this body of just a microcosm of what the hell, and they're useless. I just, to this very day, I can never pinpoint their actual purpose on anything. You have the UN Security Council that also goes against anything the United States tries to do, and they always want to sit there and say, that's a violation of international law and this and the third. And it's like, we are the international law. If it wasn't for us, you wouldn't be able to do the things that you're doing.
It would all break down. No, you're right. Without us, it would all break down.
True. And, they sit there in New York. I'm like, you're on our land, you're in our.
And they live like princes, don't they? I don't know, Randy. I don't know these guys.
Yes.
But don't they live like princes?
They do. They're very well funded.
Yeah. Why doesn't Mom Donnie tax them? Why doesn't Mom Donnie?
Oh, yeah. That won't happen. That won't happen. So it's crazy to me that we're. It's a self-licking ice cream cone that we are allowing all these things to transpire, and not only in our country, but we're bringing the stupidity to other countries, and they're like, "You're dumb, but we'll take that, thank you." So we just need to start.
Take your money.
Yeah, we'll take your money. Yes, it's like you want to spend. Okay, yeah, we'll take that. Sure. But guess what? You're not going to use our air bases. You're not your air bases. You're not going to use your air bases in our country. You're not going to be able to, utilize our headquarters building, to set up shop. No, but go ahead and write that check.
A lot of that is, Randy, going back to the beginning of our talk, a lot of that is the socialism in these European countries has allowed the invasion of the Islamic faith to the extent that they're scared to death of them.
Mm-hmm. It's true.
They are scared to death of their own population that they've allowed in.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So they won't have any comment to make about any bad player in the Middle East.
That's true. That's true.
Anyone.
That's true.
They won't. They will be anti-Israel. It's predictable. They will be anti-Israel on everything.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're in fear of. I mean, I think Islam in France is 10% of the population. In Britain, it's I think 6%. I think in Germany, it's around 10%. And these are enclaves that are separate from the country at large. That are very violent. Yeah. And you can't touch them. Common law, they don't allow.
You're right, and I'm glad Rich. Oh my God, we could go all day with this. I'm glad you said that because, ladies and gentlemen, listen to what Rich just said. He just gave percentages of the Islamist populations in these countries that are quite literally a third or less, because France, Germany, and France, they're pretty big in size. But let's look at England. England is about the size of California, when you look at it from a geographical, perspective. If they have that percentage of a Muslim population, now let's translate that to the United States. The United States has a 13, 14, depending on who you're arguing with that day. They have a 14% black population in the United States, which is astronomically way bigger than these three countries combined. And if they have if they have that large of a percentage, that's almost as equal to the black population in the United States, which has a very significant voting power base in the United States. Just imagine what they're doing to these countries over there. Just imagine that, ladies and gentlemen. Just think about that. And you're right. They're taking over these countries. That little tiny population of people are taking over these countries because they don't have the populace size to combat it.
They freeze the opposition by saying you're all a bunch of racists.
Racist, exactly. yes.
You
racist,
can't do anything to us. If you say one bad word about us, you're a racist.
Racist, you're Islamophobic, and you're a xenophobe, and it's like. So I would be the wrong person to talk to.
Like a frozen deer in the headlights. Oh my God!
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Because so there's a lot of they're playing every angle. It's literally the European countries are paying for the destruction of their own foundations because they're allowing these massive populations to move in who do not agree at all with British common law or with the Napoleonic Code, which is the European continent-based law.
Yeah.
They don't believe in it. They believe in Sharia. They don't believe in cathedrals. They believe in
mosque.
in mosque, and that's it.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I've got a call coming in here. There we go.
No worries. Share with us any final thoughts. This is great. Like I said, I can go all day with this, but I know you gotta get out of here. Share us with any final thoughts and where people can follow you and support you, sir.
Again, I think our country is in desperate need of an education. I've made the DNA of Democracy series as readable, as entertaining, and informative as I can for a common reader, right? But it's full of what we should take pride in and defend. And then the second volume, the one advertised here, is all about what we're fighting against. And it is the incremental growth of socialism in our country that is now a very great threat to our ongoing freedom.
Yes.
So they can find me at richardclyons.com, as you see there, and at Amazon as well.
Awesome, sir. It was a pleasure as always. Look forward to have you back on anytime. Give us updates on what's going on. A brief rundown, a briefing of a rundown of what's going on around the world. I love it, and looking forward to catching up with you again soon.
Okay, thank you, Randy. Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely, my pleasure. My pleasure. Be safe. Take care. Talk to you soon.
You too.
Ladies and gentlemen, Richard C. Lyons. Hey, look. We, like I said, I could talk to him all day about these things, because I don't get a chance to talk to people about this stuff, because it kind of goes over their head. It's like, huh? What are you talking about? So I love it. I love these kind of conversations, and foreign policy, international affairs, international policy, just getting into the nitty gritty of not only religion but faith, and how to navigate these systems, and the breakdown of not only democracies, but the theocratic idea of running a country, as you see with Iran and stuff like that. These are things that, cataclysmically speaking, when it comes to a head, this is what happens when you have opposing views. This is not just like a Democrat-Republican thing in the United States. That is a microcosm as to what is actually going on across the globe. You have competing ideas, competing interests, competing agendas. I mean, you look at the Democrat Party in itself, just in the United States, they're self-imploding right now because they have so many competing interests fighting for power and fighting to be heard, fighting to be seen, and this, that, and the third. And you got the same thing going on the Republican side. Republicans, by and large, is a smaller faction as a party compared to the Democrat Party, and that's because we kind of look at it like, okay, yeah, you have that singular issue, okay, that's cool, and you have that issue, or you have these list of issues, okay, that's cool. We could get on board with all of that. We could all come together and help each other out. You don't find that with the Democrat Party. It's either all or nothing with these folks. But folks, all kinds of people calling me right now. So they're probably like, dude. But hey, we're gonna jump up out of here. I got other stuff to take care of, and I will catch you all in a couple of weeks. Well, no, I'll be back tomorrow. My bad. Be back tomorrow. But outside of that, I want you all to make sure you go out and you pick up your copy of Polarizing America, A Dichotomous Society. I talk about these things in this book, actually. I talk about a lot of that. So I get that, do that, and yeah, we'll catch you all tomorrow. I'll be back on tomorrow. And other than that, y'all be safe. God bless you all. Take care. Ciao, ciao. Holla. I hope you enjoyed today's program. You can follow, like, share, subscribe on Spotify, Substack, Rumble, YouTube, Facebook, and your news. And also, you can download Let the Truth Be Told app on your favorite streaming platforms, such as Fire Stick, Apple TV, and Roku. Take care. God bless.